Thank you very much. My name is Jennifer DePazzo Gilbert, and I represent NETA. Thank you, committee members, and thank you for everybody that came out tonight. I know that we only have half an hour and that we have to share our time with Sanctuary, so I am now going to turn it over to Amanda Rosatano, who is the president of NETA, and of course, we will be available to answer any questions that the committee has. Thank you very much.
Good evening. We were asked to be brief tonight, so we will do our best to be brief. There was a lot in that other presentation that.
Yeah, I think if you run over a little, it's not the end of the world.
Thank you.
We want to be fair.
So first off, I want to start off by acknowledging the time involved here by the town, by the select board, by these subcommittees, our neighbors, our customers, our patients and supporters as we work together so that NETA can continue to be a positive part of this neighborhood. Thank you. Adult use cannabis in Massachusetts.
For the record, just to introduce yourself.
Oh, I apologize. Amanda Rosatano, I'm NETA's president. I've been with NETA since day one, and many of you have seen me before this committee and other committees in the past. Adult use cannabis in Massachusetts generally, and in Brookline specifically, is new and constantly evolving. Here's what I know to be true. NETA is helping people every day. There is a misconception that only our medical patients benefit from cannabis. Quite frankly, that is just inaccurate. We see people every single day, and the vast majority of our adult use clients are coming into our facility to find relief. Relief from pain, relief for sleep, anxiety, cancer treatments. And we lost my presentation. Excuse me. Yes, so our adult use customers are, the conversations that we're having with our adult use customers are very, very similar to those conversations we're having with our patients. Sure, some folks are coming into NETA because they want to use cannabis recreationally, but more often than not, we're finding that people are coming in because cannabis helps their quality of life. We provide really important access for a lot of people. We acknowledge that. And we're able to do that in a way that's efficient and with smooth operations at our facility. Now that NETA is fully staffed, operations are even smoother and faster. We have applied lessons learned to shorten our lines and create efficiencies in our operation. We are bringing more customers to Brookline Village businesses, and we have the support of the Chamber of Commerce and many of our local businesses. We've supplied the town of Brookline and the Brookline Community Foundation with significant funding to help address these concerns. In addition, NETA continues to pay for police details and other measures agreed upon with the town and with our neighbors. There is a lot of development happening in Brookline Village. NETA is just one piece of that story. I want to mention that, my understanding is this conversation is not about reciting NETA. There was a lot of conversation in the first piece of the presentation that suggested that NETA just doesn't belong in Brookline Village. We are here. We are committed to being a good neighbor, and we believe that our operations have been run in a way that we are effective at meeting the needs of our customers while also addressing the concerns of the community. We know there's some work to do, but we think that there are solutions at play. Before we turn our attention to the Warrant Articles, I want to highlight the impact fees that NETA is making and that the town is legally required to use for mitigation. I was pleased to hear that the recommendation to the town meeting will include a plan to appropriate some of the mitigation funds that NETA has contributed. This is an important step, an important first step in addressing our neighbors' concerns. We have to spend that money first. We're asking you tonight to please recommend no action on Warrant Articles number 1 and Warrant Articles number 2 of the special town meeting number 3. The law that established legal cannabis here in Massachusetts acknowledged that there would be impacts for marijuana establishments, especially in these early days when there are not a lot of facilities around. We acknowledge that we are one of the only facilities in the greater Boston area, and to suggest that additional shops opening in and around greater Boston will not impact NETA's business is simply false. I'm not going to refute every piece of information that was included in that presentation, but one thing I will say is that that data was incredibly selective and looked at the two first states to launch legal cannabis in the country. There is a lot of data out there that would suggest to the contrary, that NETA will see a reduction as additional stores open, especially additional stores here in Brookline. But I also want to remind you that we're not refuting the fact that we're busy, and we believe that we are able to accommodate the customers that we can see today. And I think another point to make there is that NETA is limited, quite frankly, in the volume that it can do. We can only sell as much cannabis as we can produce, and we are at capacity. We do not have space to grow. So NETA's volume may stay steady for a while, but it is not likely to increase because we are selling all of the cannabis that we can, as an organization, produce right now. NETA entered into a host community agreement with the town of Brookline with an expectation that its volume would be high, and to ensure that appropriate funds would be allocated to address those impacts. We've made good on that contribution to the town. We have been paying those impact fees. However, the allocation of that funding is just beginning. To date, NETA has provided approximately $1.4 million in impact fees since it opened here in Brookline Village. We believe that it's the sensible, responsible, and fair thing to do to spend this money first before restricting NETA's operations. As you know, at the same special town meeting that these 3 warrant articles are being considered at, that funding and the vote for the funding, for the allocation of that impact funding will finally be taken. And some of those funds will finally be allocated to address some of the impacts that our neighbors have expressed and that have raised concerns about. These expenditures include significant spending for the Brookline Police Department. This is a reasonable way to address issues around public consumption. These impact fees include money spent for the Department of Public Works and for additional trash receptacles in Brookline Village. That will address issues dealing with litter in Brookline Village. Litter that, by the way, has been a problem, continues to be a problem, but it's not a NETA-specific problem. There is litter in Brookline Village because there's a lack of trash receptacles in Brookline Village, and because it is an urban area where people tend to litter. We acknowledge that it's an issue. We've taken steps to address it on our own, and we believe that the town should take steps to address it as well. Some of this funding will go to the health department for educational initiatives. And some money will be spent for benefits for the new full-time hires that will come as part of this spending. The continued use of these funds is important. These funds were put in place to ensure that impacts were addressed, and they have not been spent yet. We need to spend those funds first. We believe that these funds will provide relief for concerns of our neighbors, whether those concerns are real or perceived. NETA has met its commitment to pay. We will continue to meet our commitment to pay. We will continue to work with our neighbors, but we must ask that the money be spent before our operations are restricted. It's true, Brookline Village is changing. It isn't the same as it was years ago. In addition to NETA, which brings a lot of people into Brookline Village every day, there are several major development projects that have started around the same time as NETA and that are still ongoing today. We have proposed 4-story mixed-use development project with 16 residential units and commercial space. The hotel at 700 Brookline Avenue, 1 and 2 Brookline Place, which will bring lots of people from out of town into Brookline Village. Of course, the Audi Brookline renovations, and these are just the major development projects. There's other changes going on in Brookline Village as well. Brookline High School freshman class and teachers are allowed to park on Walnut Street to accommodate the teachers and staff assigned to this a temporary site. That has an impact on parking on Walnut Street. In March of 2019, 2 weeks before NETA opened, the Brighton District Court moved its civil and criminal business to the Brookline District Court on Washington Street, just steps from NETA. These projects also bring more traffic, more people, create other potential impacts to the village area while reducing available parking and creating additional traffic. It's also important to acknowledge the positive impacts of all of these new projects and of NETA on the Brookline Village neighborhood. New development, new businesses, and new faces visiting Brookline Village Business District brings economic growth and vibrancy into the Brookline community, and we're proud to be a part of that. Oh, I'm sorry. We've heard from the police on this. We talk to our police details every day. We've had multiple meetings with Lieutenant Hayes, with Chief Lipson. We are in constant contact with the police, and we work very, very closely because we want to understand how our business is impacting the community. At the last meeting that we had, Lieutenant Hayes shared some data that we reshare with you right now. Crime is not up in Brookline Village. 27 reported Part A crimes from March to September of this year, with a 5-year average of 29 Part A crimes. Crime has not increased. The average has dropped a little bit. Of those 27 incidents, only 1 incident involved a NETA customer. The rest were not related to or not attributed to NETA at all. I want to touch on this issue of public urination for a moment, because this is something that comes up time and time again. NETA has 5 bathrooms at its facility, and we have no lines of people waiting for those bathrooms. We have 2 porta potties outside, on site, and we have 3 restrooms within our facility. We have no reason to believe our customers are urinating in public more than any other individual that is coming into Brookline Village. In fact, we've heard from a neighbor recently that she's concerned that this blame is being placed on NETA when perhaps there might be a larger issue related to the fact that there are numerous construction projects in Brookline Village with few places for people to use the restroom. We've since reached out to the building department on this to ask if they look into these work sites and make sure that there are adequate facilities, and if they are not, we welcome anyone to use our restrooms or our porta potties on site at NETA. We do not know why there would be any good reason for someone to urinate in public when we have bathrooms right on our site. Again, we've worked closely with the police. Lieutenant Hayes spoke at the last meeting and suggested that they haven't seen a significant decrease in the quality of life in Brookline Village. I'm sure other people have different perspectives, and we can appreciate those perspectives, and we can work towards solutions. But the facts are the facts. The numbers are the numbers. This is the data that we know right now, and it looks to us like Brookline Village looks pretty similar as it relates to crime as it has in previous years. We have several neighbors now who have shared letters to provide an alternate perspective to what some of our opposition has suggested. We know that people that live in Brookline Village aren't all experiencing the concerns that some of our neighbors here tonight have, and their voices should be heard as well. The business community, including the Chamber of Commerce, have expressed support for NETA and the positive impacts that NETA's customers and employees bring to the community. We believe strongly that issues regarding public parking, issues regarding public consumption and litter, which are the most common complaints, can certainly be addressed through the proper use of the impact fees. We are committed to being a good neighbor, and we work really hard at doing that. We have taken every single concern of our neighbors seriously, and we've collaborated with them, with the police, with local businesses, where we can, to take positive actions and impact change when needed and as appropriate. There is often disagreement between neighbors as to what the right solution is. You know, we had some requests for some signage. We worked with neighbors to get some signage placed. Some neighbors don't like the signs. You know, we're willing to work towards other solutions, although we do feel that, again, when we use those impact fees properly, when we put police in the neighborhoods to make sure that the neighbors' concerns are taken seriously and are addressed, that those signs won't be needed anymore. We use data and we use tools to track and measure our impacts. We acknowledge that there are limitations to our traffic demand management, to the parking study that was referred to by one of the speakers and a result of our traffic demand management plan. We are continuing to do additional follow-up analysis, which I'll touch on in a moment. I wanna just make one point there on the traffic study in the parking lot. You know, it was suggested that prior to us closing the lot, there were lines and lines of people circling the sidewalks and around Brookline Village. That never happened. NETA opened with its parking lot closed in coordination with the police department, with the Board of Selectmen, and with several of our neighbors who made clear to us that they would prefer our queue not be on the sidewalk. NETA's lines have never been on the sidewalk, and we could pull video footage to show you that. We have never had a queue of our adult use customers lined up on the sidewalk. Those lines from day one have been contained in our parking lot. And again, we would love to have that parking back, but we worked closely with the town on this solution to what we thought could be a problem for our neighbors, and that is having groups congregating on the sidewalk. So we've been able to contain that on our own property, and those lines have been orderly. There haven't been any incidents or issues on site, no security, no violence. They're peaceful people waiting in line to purchase a product that is now legal in this state. They have the right to be there, and we accept them. We want them to be there. Yes, NETA is making money on our customers. We are a business, but we also provide really important access to people who really need this product, and that's not just on the medical side. We log our community complaints. We had very, very few community complaints within the first few months of opening for adult use. We worked very closely with some of the neighbors in this room to work on those signs and to change messaging on our website and to really take productive steps to acknowledge that they have concerns and to try to address those concerns, short of spending the money that is in place to address those concerns. Those complaints skyrocketed after these warrant articles were introduced. So I do believe there's some correlation between the volume of complaints that we've received and the idea that NETA's operations could be restricted. In addition to the impact fees, the town of Brookline collects a 3% local sales tax on the sale of marijuana. And NETA makes significant charitable contributions to Brookline organizations through its NETA Cares philanthropic arm, and to date has contributed over $875,000 to the Brookline Community Foundation. This is going towards really important programming with BCF. Resident services programs for the Housing Authority, the Brookline Food Pantry, youth health and wellness education programs, preparing for a changing landscape with commercial marijuana. These are programs that we've worked with to fund at the Brookline Community Foundation, and these are having a positive impact on this community. I also, before we actually get to this slide, can we back up for just 1 second? It's really important to me. Oh, I apologize. I'm on the wrong slide here. Apologies for the mishap with the computer here. I'm a Mac person myself. So I mentioned earlier, our adult use customers are coming to seek relief. Some of them are not. Some of them are coming for recreational purchases. But it cannot be undermined how important this access is to people. Without NETA, here in the greater Boston area, people have very few options. The most likely option, if they're not coming to us, is they're going to the illicit market. And we feel it is our responsibility to prevent that, and it is our responsibility to serve the people that we can serve. Reducing hours limits access. There's all there is to it. So we agreed from the get-go when we came to the town and we said, listen, we're going to be a lot busier when adult use happens. We're going to see a lot of people. We would like to expand our hours to make sure that we can properly handle the volume of customers that we see every day. It was intentional. And it's working. We have a very smooth operation on site. As I said, we have police officers there every single day that I interact with on a very regular basis who tell me, wow, you guys have done a remarkable job at handling the number of customers that you see every day, and who have told me that, we think things are really going well. So again, I understand there's other perspectives, but I think the perspective of our police force is incredibly important. We participate and we contribute, again, through our BCF contributions, to the Brookline Food Pantry. We sponsor Team Brookline for the Boston Marathon, the Yawkey Family Inn, Keys for Hope. These are organizations that are near and dear to our hearts and that we are very, very proud to support here in Brookline. And an important point, we celebrate diversity and inclusion. We promote diversity in our hiring practices. We've brought in an incredibly diverse staff into Brookline. Many are Brookline residents. And we are accepting of all people in our stores. We have incredibly strong diversity and social equity programs. I know one of the speakers tonight said we haven't done enough on that. Maybe the town hasn't done enough, but NETA is doing it on their own. And in fact, we have a designated director level position focusing on diversity and equity. And because this is such an important topic, we brought her here tonight. I'd like to introduce, just for a brief moment, our Director of Diversity Programs, Kim Napoli, to just say a few words about that.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for everyone for taking the time to listen and to sit through this. I'm so much taller than everyone else. It is a lot to come and gather and to put all this out there. So again, I appreciate the time. I actually was the director of outreach for the campaign to legalize cannabis. I'm an attorney. I'm also pregnant, and I am having my 4th child, which I will do just down the street at Beth Israel. So I'm a frequent visitor of this neighborhood at 1 Brookline Place. And I would agree there's a lot of change happening in this neighborhood, especially over there. Diversity programs at NETA are something that is, I take very seriously, and I'm very happy to say that the organization takes it seriously. Without that corporate top-down buy-in, then there is no real program that you can speak of. We have partnered with Roxbury Community College, most recently to offer internships to people who are from areas of disproportionate impact, like Dudley Square, Dorchester, Mattapan, et cetera, to give them an opportunity in the industry that otherwise might not be available. We have strong recruiting programs. We sponsor business partnerships with local area business partners like Black Market and Dudley Square also, to essentially uplift and bring people in, again, to the industry where they otherwise wouldn't have access. So at NETA, that's just a sprinkling of some of the things that we do, but it is very important that this sort of our ability to do this continue. I just wanted to make one quick comment as far as the hours go. Cannabis and the legalization of cannabis was about access, and allowing people to have access to that cannabis is ever important. I think if you require people to go to an appointment-only system, that requires people to engage in a process that they didn't sign up for when they voted for legalized cannabis. There are reasons why people,
Let's be respectful.
there are many reasons why someone would not want their name on a register. Having the ability to go into a store and make a purchase, just like any other thing you would purchase, is essential to legalized cannabis, and again, essential to providing that access for everyone. So not only I think, diversity programs are important, but also that access is truly what NETA is about, and we just look for the opportunity to continue to do that.
Kim made an important point that I'm going to reiterate. I mentioned that a lot of our adult use customers come in to find relief, come in because they themselves are patients going through some kind of treatment or looking for some kind of symptom relief. Kim touched on the registry. I can't tell you how many of our adult use customers come into our store and say, thank goodness for adult use, because now I'm not suffering anymore, and I couldn't be a medical patient. I couldn't register as a medical patient. Well, why? Because I'm a federal attorney, and I don't want to be on a registry for a product that's federally illegal, right? That's just one example. I'm a gun owner, and I'm worried that if I'm on a federal registry, then the feds will come and take my guns away. We hear that all the time. Whether or not it's true,
Excuse me, let's please be respectful. Let
Whether-
everyone talk. You will have your time to talk as well.
Whether or not that is true, I actually don't think that is true, and we haven't seen that to date. These are the real concerns, the perception of our customers. And that perception is important too. I want to focus for a minute on our operations and what it is that we do at NETA and how we do it. And so we currently do have parking. It's not zero. We lease 15 parking spots at the Homewood Suites, less than a block from our facility. We have 6 designated parking spots for our customers, and we have 3 ADA accessible parking spots on site at NETA. We hope to have our parking lot open soon. In fact, as you'll see in a couple of slides upcoming, our lines are shrinking. They're shrinking dramatically. Every week over week, we see shorter and shorter queues. We are not necessarily seeing less and less people, but the operation is becoming more efficient and the lines are shrinking. We have an operation out in Northampton, as many of you know. It's been open for about 3 or 4 months longer than NETA Brookline has been. We see almost an identical number of customers at that store. Again, we are limited by our production, so we are basically at capacity at our 2 facilities. And by the way, we are planning to open, we're applying right now for a 3rd facility license in Franklin, Mass. So some of that supply will inevitably be shifted to that location, reducing our ability to serve as many customers as we do here in Brookline to distribute that demand over our 3 locations instead of 2. So we do think that, within the next several months, we'll be able to get that parking lot reopened because those lines outside will be short enough to manage without having to close that lower lot. The line rarely spills into the lower lot today. We don't allow our staff to park on the streets, and if they do drive in, they're required to park in a garage that NETA provides some reimbursement for. We don't reimburse fully for car parking because we don't want to encourage it. However, we do reimburse fully for public transportation, including parking at a T garage. So if you want to park your car at a T garage and at a T lot and take the T into work, we're going to pay for that 100%. We've recently, we did have some complaints from our neighbors about, a few months back, it sort of peaked where some of our employees were not following that parking policy very well. We took several initiatives to make sure that that was reinforced, including something that I felt was a little bit harsh, but wanted to really acknowledge our neighbors' concerns, and we wanted to make sure that they were being taken seriously by our staff as well as by our leadership team. So we essentially said, you know, if you violate this parking policy one time, it's immediate termination. So we took it seriously. We don't like to have to hold that over our employees' heads, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to happen. And we've heard from several of those neighbors that they haven't seen those employees parking on their streets. And our employees were trained on these policies, and they've signed attestations, so they know that this is the consequences of their actions. Again, I reiterate that we have restrooms on site. There is no reason for us to believe that our customers have some sort of desire to urinate in public. We have adequate facilities for the people that we serve, and we don't have lines to use our restrooms. We have staff and police on site, outside, every day to ensure safe and efficient operations. There was some concern raised recently about the availability of police details. You know, there are occasions where one of our details is not able to show. We try to staff 2 for all of our operating hours. So we met with the police chief. We met with Lieutenant Hayes. We said, hey, we want to make sure that we have adequate coverage here. So what we came to an agreement on is that we would supplement our police details with our own private security consultant. That is the Ed Davis LLC. So Ed Davis, the former Boston Police Commissioner, has a lot of experience in policing, and we thought was a good solution to support us for this initiative. And so now, during our busiest times, regardless of whether or not we have 2 police details on, we also have at least one person from Ed Davis's team who comes to support us. And what we've asked the police to do is instead of their 2 current position posts at the NETA driveway and at the corner of Route 9 in Washington, that when the Ed Davis team is with us, that they shift one of those police details to the corner of White Place and Washington Street. White Place is certainly, as you'll hear tonight, probably the street that we've had the most concerns from our neighbors on. So we wanted to make sure there was a presence there. We wanted to make sure that the police had their eyes on that street, that if there are issues of public consumption, if there are issues of public urination, traffic, litter, parking enforcement, there's somebody there to take a look, to take note, and to take action if need be. The police have told you, they've reported themselves, it's been positive. NETA's existence in Brookline Village has been a positive thing. There have not been an increase in demonstrable incidents by the police. On the litter piece, when we started hearing from our neighbors, hey, we're finding your receipts on the ground. You have a litter problem. We said, do we? Let's hit the streets. Let's find out. So we started the NETA Green Team. And regardless of whether or not, the trash comes from NETA or from other facilities, from other customers, we said, you know what? We have the resources to do this. Let's get out there. This is great for the community. It doesn't matter who's creating the trash. Let's get out there and have a positive impact. So we did that. We recently, once we got fully staffed up, we started to do that once a week. And right now the Green Team hits the streets once a week. In our last collection, we did a radius around a significant radius around the NETA facilities. We hit parks, we hit residential streets. We cleaned up 5 full trash bags of trash and litter from Brookline Village. Our team loves to do it. It's really actually fun. They get high-fived as they see the neighbors in the neighborhood. It feels really good to be out on the streets and being a part of the community like that. I do want to mention that of those 5 bags of trash, and I do have photos of this that I did not put in my presentation tonight, maybe I should have. Out of those 5 trash bags full of trash, a very small portion of one of those bags was NETA trash. So trash in Brookline Village is not a new problem. There's a lack of receptacles in the village. We're excited to see the town's purchased a Big Belly to put there, but we actually didn't want to wait for that Big Belly to come. I frequently walk the village and I pick up trash. I don't care whose trash it is. I don't like to see trash in the village. And I'll find myself holding on to it for quite a long time before I get to an area where I can actually throw it out. So I said, this is crazy. You know, this is a heavily populated area. So we went out, we purchased a trash can, we put it at the corner of Washington and White Place, and we're maintaining that with our staff every day. We're maintaining a public trash can in Brookline Village for whoever wants to throw out trash. You know, the signage that you'll see on some streets and in some areas is in Brookline Village. Those signs were a collaboration between NETA, between our neighbors, and between the police department and the town. Some people don't like the signs. We understand that. I'm not crazy about them. I'm not going to lie. I don't love the signs. I'd love to see the signs be replaced with more patrols of the village and more parking enforcement on our residential streets. And just a side note there, NETA fully supports and has been supportive of initiatives to have residential only parking districts if that is what our neighbors want. We're fully in support of that, and you know, we would back that 100%. We've recently relaunched our Be a Good Neighbor campaign. Okay, so this is, you know, our Be a Good Neighbor campaign essentially is our way of communicating to our customers that we've worked hard to get here, and we want to be a part of this neighborhood in a positive way. So it's a way to remind people to take the tea when you come to NETA, to make sure you pick up after yourself, to be respectful of the parking areas, and to use our designated parking or the garages that we point out to our customers in our transportation guide. So this is, you know, we've added language to our reserve ahead messaging to let people know that parking is limited and to encourage them to take the tea. You know, we've taken incremental steps, working with the neighbors, listening to their concerns, hearing their ideas. Some of our neighbors have had really great ideas that we've adopted that have helped to smooth things out over time. So, you know, I'll just reiterate that we have seen significant efficiencies over time. And we continue to see reductions in the line. And you know, I think after this slide, we'll show some photos actually we'll show them now. This is what our parking lot looked like in July at the 7 p.m. hour, July 27th, 2019, and this was last Saturday. At 7 p.m. No queuing in the lower lot, very short queue on site. This is a Saturday. This is doing similar numbers to what we have been doing. This isn't a reflection of a reduction in volume. This is actually a reflection of improvement in our capacity to serve people. So to touch on this appointment-only model that's being proposed, I bring it back to access. We were never shy about telling the town that we were going to serve a large volume of people at NETA, especially in the early days. We are serving the greater Boston area. We acknowledge that. There are other dispensaries that are soon to open, but right now, you know, we're the only game in town. This is important access. Brookline, you know, should be, in my opinion, proud to be first to bring this kind of access to the greater Boston area, and to do it in a way that has been celebrated as one of the most professional, well-run marijuana establishments in the country. We hear that time and time again. We hear it from the Brookline Police Department. We hear it from other marijuana establishments. We hear it from people who are part of this industry and people who are not. We hear it from our customers every day who come in and say, wow, you guys, you know, for as many people as you serve, you sure do give a good experience to the folks that come through these doors. Appointments will reduce that access. We our efficiency is really at the heart of how we can serve the number of people that we can serve. It's about understanding that we have almost 30 registers in our store. And those registers really allow us to be flexible. If somebody needs to spend an hour with one of our patient service associates because they need education, whether they're a medical patient registered with the state or a customer that walked in off the street who is looking for relief, we'll spend as much time with that person as we need to. We can do that because we have so many other registers to take care of the customers who want to just be in and out. We have two different service models, full service and reserve ahead, because we acknowledge that while some people want to be in and out with their orders, other people need time and education. If we were forced to an appointment-only model, we would have to decide what that appointment slot looked like. So in order to maximize our ability to serve, we'd have to choose an appointment time that's relatively short, say 15 minutes or so. Well, then the person that needs to come in for an hour, they don't get to come in for an hour anymore. We have to make do with what we're working with here. And so appointments essentially eliminate that efficiency and will reduce our ability to provide access in the way that we're providing it today. We are an urban location. We have an established business model. People know what to expect when they come to NETA. They know when they get here, if they haven't reserved their order, they can wait in an orderly queue that's contained on our property. We don't think a sudden change to an appointment-only model is all of a sudden going to resonate with all of our customers. They're still going to come, okay? And when they do come, they're going to no longer have the option to queue on site at NETA. Instead, they will make their appointment and they will find somewhere else to wait. Maybe it's in Brookline Village. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. But inevitably, the people will still come. We've heard from many of our customers that if we implement appointments, they just won't shop at NETA anymore. They can go online. And they can go to what we call a gray market dispensary, so a delivery service that's not a regulated entity, that's not a licensed entity, that is delivering to people in the state. They will be supporting the illicit market. And they will have no other choice because NETA, again, is the only game in town at this point. And inevitably, we will serve less people. There will be reduced revenues coming into the town, reduced impact fees, and less money to address the mitigation that we haven't exactly had any spending done for yet. I'll leave it at that. I have plenty more that I could say, but we would rather be able to answer your questions tonight. So I do want to mention that we have significant support from many businesses here in Brookline Village who unfortunately can't see my beautiful slide that shows all of their lovely logos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sanctuary is the company that's proposing to open Torchmark. Go ahead, please, Mr.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Kimmel, and I am the opening manager for the Sanctuary Dispensary in Brookline. I'm only going to say a few words today because we're not open yet. And while we clearly understand the anguish, some of the pain, and clearly the concern of the community, it's hard for me to defend Sanctuary when we're not open yet. Having said that, I would like to make a couple of comments. First of all, I want to thank the chair for maintaining a certain decorum in the meeting. Most appreciated. There are many voices here. In today's culture, we all need to have a voice and respect that voice. Secondarily, I want you to know that I used to own a business in Colorado, and it was a cannabis business. When cannabis first came to Colorado, there were lines. There were significant lines. Currently, as astounding as it may sound, Denver is now the home of, I think it's 300 475 dispensaries. Denver. In the state, it's over 1,000. So you have to scratch your head and ask yourself, why are there no lines in Colorado? It's because of the volume of stores. It's really that black and white. Secondarily, I want to say the following, and you'll forgive me if I get on a soapbox just for a moment. My background is predominantly in restaurant, design, and consulting. I've done it all over the world. Touché to the comments about how site selection is important. There is no doubt. That's a fact. Having said that, when one restaurant opens up and there's no other restaurants around, there's a huge waiting line to get in. As more restaurants open, those lines diminish. It's just the way it works, especially when you're offering a product that's in great demand. That's what's going on here. We, Sanctuary, we project to open sometime early spring, late winter. In our business model, we project much less revenue than what NETA has been doing, because there's only so many fish in the pond, and there's only so much of a piece of that pond we're going to get. It's not as if, as more dispensaries or stores open up, more people are going to come and buy cannabis. It's not what happens. Quite contraire, as more stores open up, you'll see lines diminish, unless NETA has a lock on a product that is so spectacular that quality drives the business. Respectfully to NETA, their product is good. And yes, they're getting a lot of business because of it. Ladies and gentlemen, again, it's not my position here to advocate one or the other, whether NETA's right or wrong, or whether you're right or wrong. I've been sitting in the back listening to the comments. I have to admit, it's a little distressing. My dear, as they like to say in the vernacular, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and quite honestly, we are good-intentioned people. I understand there have been issues. And again, I'll close by simply saying, I'm not here advocating one way or the other. I'm here to listen. And that's what we've done this evening. I thank you all for taking a moment to listen.
Members of the committee, I'm going to ask them to refrain from making comments or giving opinions, but just questions, short and crisp, seeking information or clarification.
So I'm hearing that we have public nuisance, what I'm going to call public nuisance problems, public urination, consumption, the litter, etc. And then we're having the parking and the traffic issues. Have the petitioners spoken with the transportation board, and has the Brookline Parking Improvement District, I believe is the former proper name of it, which is set to address some of the parking issues in Brookline Village. Have you consulted with them, and what kind of answers have you gotten?
Campion, Walnut Street. There was a transportation meeting chaired by Chris Dempsey that a number of us went to. I can't tell you the date, but that happened. Some of us were here.
And I believe there's been a no parking without a permit between in the morning hours on Walnut Street. Is it going to be 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Has that taken effect yet? No, it hasn't taken effect yet.
Okay. And then when you were discussing the hours, are you aware that in Great Barrington, Dairy Wellness is open 8 to 10, 7 days a week? And I believe they've been open for recreational sales longer than that, maybe by 6 months now. I'm sorry. And I was just wondering why you haven't engaged in that.
Are you asking me?
understanding of what your data set was. And since if we do have other places here in. What was the other one you mentioned? Canna Provisions, which just opened in Lee. I spent a lot of time in Berkshire, so that's why I know these two.
So, yeah.
And just to answer your question about the Transportation Board, I asked Chris Dempsey if he had been handed this report that I just gave to you, and he said, I don't have any recollection of the Transportation Board reviewing anything NETA related in the summer of 2019. So they weren't even asked to look at it. Chris Dempsey, head of the Transportation Board.
That report was.
Please, come up to the microphone, identify yourself.
Jennifer Gilbert, attorney for NETA. All of the traffic reports go to the Director of Transportation for the town, and if he wants to ask for additional data, which he does, we provide it. And if there's any mitigation recommended by the town, we are required to institute it. So all of the reports have gone to the town, and we've provided all the data that they've requested, and there have been no recommended mitigation actions.
I think maybe the confusion is that the speaker was referring to Chris Dempsey, who's chair of the Transportation Board, as opposed to you're sending the reports to the Transportation Department.
Exactly, and if there was an issue.
It's possible that the reports, sounds like they did go to the Transportation Department, which is the town.
Right.
But possibly also they didn't get to the Transportation Board.
Right, and they probably wouldn't get there unless there was an issue or a problem that they had to have a hearing on. And I think that the Transportation Board meeting that was mentioned, I was there specifically to support, on behalf of NETA, to support the request for resident parking only, but for some reason it was only requested from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., and they did approve it unanimously.
I'm looking toward Grant Kimball, maybe he can speak to the statements just made by Sanctuary regarding demand, and some of the statements were made earlier, because I know you've done some work in this area, so I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Be happy to. First, I'll say that I wrote a white paper on this in late November of 2018 that was carefully referenced and checked. It's been in the public domain. It's been on the website we had for St. Mary's for 11 months, and it's been downloaded a few thousand times, so a lot of people looked at it. Second, let me give you the data. This comes from the state of Washington, where their Department of Revenue lists sales per store by month. So you can look at number of stores open, total revenue in the state, and revenue per store. And I didn't bring a PowerPoint of this, but I'll just show a few of these. The first sale store in all of the state was Cannabis City. Been there, it's on 4th Street in Soto. And it had lines out the door, covered by the New York Times, July 8th, 2014. Within 3 days, the lines were gone. But in its second month of operation, it almost doubled its revenue, even though Seattle opened, state of Washington opened 17 more stores. At the end of its first year, the state of Washington had opened 117 additional stores, but its volume per month was double where it had been before. I then looked at every single one of the 20 largest stores in the state of Washington for the first 12 months they were open. I looked at 241 store months of data over time. I compared it to the number of stores that were open each month after one of these stores opened. I looked at 439 gross stores, netted out the 34 whose licenses were suspended or revoked during that period. And for those stores, that's this graph. The 3 urban stores that are in the Seattle area had their revenues growing, even though the green line, more stores were coming up. The rural and suburban stores grew at a slightly slower rate, even though more product came in. Anyone that's been involved in consumer marketing knows the S curve, or the penetration curve. The basic formula is F over 1 minus F. Since you're all from Brooklyn, though, you can either use the Gompertz function or the logistics function. It's how popular products grow. For almost all popular products, there's more demand for the first 2 to 4 years than there is supply. That's what happened in the state of Washington. Now, people say, so that's a fact. That is just an absolute fact of what happened, and I've shown the data to Rick Garza, head of cannabis licensing for the entire state of Washington. It's been in the public domain. So that's Washington and a set of facts based on an enormous data set. Now we can talk about Massachusetts, where we don't have very good data because our state doesn't quite break it out that way. So what you can do is you can look at same store cohorts in between store openings. You can actually get daily volume of the entire cohort of stores in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we have pretty good data for the first half of 2019. So Steve, and co-chair, since you asked, I'll show you. On January 20th, 2019, the Fall River store opened, and the average weekend volume, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, of all the state's cannabis stores was 72,000 a day. The next weekend, it was 94,000. The third weekend, it was 122,000, growing even as stores were added. Then NETA opened on 23rd of March. That weekend, all the stores, including NETA, the following weekend, because NETA didn't open until Saturday, was 82,000 per day, per weekend day, 85,000 the weekend after, growing. Pittsfield opened on the 6th of April. The daily volume was 69,000, then it grew to 68,000, well, then down, then it went back up to 73,000. The Worcester store opened on the 1st of May, and at the end of the weekend after it was opened, weekend daily volume was 77,000 per store per month, and a weekend later it was $83,000 per store per month. The Newton store, Garden Remedies, which I've been to, in fact, this is actually a Fig Newton bar from the mayor's office in Newton, because I went to the store, talked to the police, and then went and talked to the mayor. So the Newton store opened. You know, I talk about my mom and Fig Newtons, and people should be laughing. We should have some fun tonight.
We can't have too much data.
So anyway, the Newton and Marlboro opened, average weekend volume went up by 11,000. Chicopee and Nantucket stores opened, average weekend volume up by 4,000. Even in Massachusetts to date, when we've opened more stores, Mr. Chairman, store volume keeps going up. Not very rapidly, not as rapidly as in Washington, but it keeps going up. So one can debate what will happen in the future. I would love to have that debate with other people from the cannabis industry. But so far in Massachusetts, we are not seeing an attenuation of per store volume when more stores open.
Earlier tonight, you gave the numbers that NETA had 75 million in sales and the average was 1.9. I was wondering if you did an analysis on whether they get more money because they're charging more than other stores. Do you have any kind of analysis to show what the average store charges for a given product versus what NETA is charging? Or did they just get more money because they're higher prices?
So, I don't have, no one in the public domain has that data for an individual store. If you look at the State Cannabis Control Commission weekly reports, which they used to issue in great detail till April, and now they're a little more summary, the average purchase in the Commonwealth, according to them, varies between $39 and $44. I don't know what it is for NETA, it might be different. I haven't looked at that. What I have looked at is you just take NETA's tax revenues, divide them by 0.03, and you know the monthly revenues of the store of recreation.
Question directed to your comments about growth. In any of your studies, did you have a comparable situation to Brookline's, where the most populous city in the state doesn't have a single shop that sells adult use marijuana, and the closest border location has one store that's open and that sells it? And would you have, should that adjacent city start selling it, would you speculate that sales in Brookline would also continue to rise under that circumstance?
The early stores in Greater Seattle, which is a much bigger metro area than Metro Boston, are actually a little further from downtown than NETA is from downtown Boston. So I'm not sure I view the municipality, the arbitrary municipal barriers as relevant. What is relevant, I think, that's a legitimate analytic thing is given NETA's vast size, there's a question as to how much more market there is. In other words, can NETA double in size the way the big Seattle stores did? I don't know. But all I can do is not speculate because I don't have the data to forecast. I can just state as a fact. In the state of Washington, volume kept growing as they added more stores, and so far in Massachusetts, volume has slowly gone up on an average per store basis, even as we've added more stores.
Do they have any statistics about what percentage of their customers are from Boston per se?
I just wanted to say that we recently engaged with a national expert on cannabis policy to take a look at Ranch Kimball's so-called white papers, and he's here this evening, and I'd like the committee to give him equal time to discuss his findings.
We're not going to have a presentation.
It's not a presentation. It's just the same. Please.
Say a few words and we're not.
William Luzier, please. Thank you.
To answer the question about percentage from Boston, it fluctuates, but on average, somewhere between 20 to 25%.
Are people who
live in Boston.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we only know that because of zip code data. We do not track any personal data of our customers.
I guess I have some difficulty with us promoting this debate when none of us has the white paper in front of us. None of us, I have not, well, you have it. I have not had a chance to read it. Hear people talk about these things like hearing them describe whatever it is going through their heads, and I don't find it useful. You can do what you like, Steve, but that's my. I hear what you're saying. What are you trying to say?
This source material for your analysis of opening and closing times, just doing a few Googles of the websites for ones that have closed early is inaccurate.
So I'm curious, because I just checked Lee and it closes at 8.
Yeah, and I was talking at Great Barrington is till 10, and I just checked Verilife that said it was closed at 9. So it's not that I want to argue.
Okay.
I'm just trying to say that I don't think using a news report is a data source is really what we should be doing here.
Well, I'm happy while we're sitting here.
With data that we have a direct relationship with.
We're not going to spend our time checking our phones to see what stores are open right now. As far as the speaker goes, I want you to identify yourself, and I'd like you to keep it to 2 or 3.
So my name is Will Luzier. I was the campaign manager for the initiative that passed in 2016. I live in Alston on the Route 66 bus, the same bus that comes to NETA. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. So first of all, I want to point out I've read Mr. Kimball's white paper, and I don't believe that it's based on fact. We have a couple of graphs here, one from Colorado that doesn't show a doubling of traffic every year. In fact, it goes up and then levels out. The same with Washington. It goes up for a couple of years and then it levels out. So there's not a doubling of.
I agree completely with your data. Thank you.
So there's a couple of other reasons why Washington and Colorado are not relevant to Massachusetts. 64% of Colorado's communities banned marijuana retail, and creating an increased demand in the communities that have not banned. And in fact, only 21% of the communities in Massachusetts have banned. So Colorado is not comparable to Massachusetts. Also, in Washington, the medical marijuana facilities, of which there were 1,500, were forced to close if they weren't associated with an adult use facility, and only 222 licenses were issued in Washington then. And so all of that the medical patients were forced to go to the adult use market, and therefore those numbers are not appropriate either. And just two other comments about the traffic that comes to NETA. I think it's artificially elevated, and there are a number of reasons for that. The first is there are 2 dispensaries in Cambridge that have closed due to regulatory issues in Cambridge. And those people are coming, and as I said, one of those places is on the 66 bus route, the same bus route that comes by NETA, and those people are coming to NETA and increasing the traffic. There is also a shortage of flour, as Amanda said, and folks who want to get more than 1/8 of an ounce of flour have to keep coming back to NETA to get their provisions. There's also a vape ban in Massachusetts now, and so those people who were using vape cartridges are now forced to use flour, and so they have to keep coming back to NETA. And one other thing that's so all of those issues are temporary, and I believe that the traffic will be reduced after those issues are resolved. And one other issue, the Cannabis Control Commission will issue new regulations this Friday, November 1st, and one of those regulations allows for home delivery. And home delivery will considerably cut down on the number of folks that come to NETA to buy their purchases.
You suggested that in order to have an appointment-only model, number of venues, for example, you go to the MFA, you can get a ticket to see a particular exhibition at a particular time slot. It doesn't have my name on it. I don't understand why you need to know the person's name in order to assign a time slot. You can have the individual could simply print out a ticket with an assigned time slot and show up with it. Why would the name have to be on it?
I wasn't suggesting that an appointment would require a name or identifier. Our arguments against appointments are really about the reduction of access.
You made a specific
No,
statement
so my
that I'm
point-
trying to probe.
Yeah, so my point was in regards to the importance of access for adult use. Not specific to appointments, but the idea that people shop as adult use customers often because they don't want to be associated with a registry as a registered medical patient. So I think perhaps there was just some confusion in terms of what I was speaking to.
So you're backing down from what you said. What you did say, excuse me, what you did say was that an appointment-only model would require registration. And I'm questioning why that's the case. And you're saying now that that is not what you said, and I'll accept that.
Yeah, I don't believe, if that's what was understood of what I said, that's not what was intended. I'm not suggesting that an appointment-only model would require some kind of registration. I simply was suggesting that medical patients must register, and that's, yeah, okay.
My second question is, you suggested that NETA was supply constrained. And can you explain why that is? Why are you unable to expand supply?
We're limited by the size and capacity of our production facility.
Is that a legal limit or a capital limit or?
I mean, it's a space limitation. We have a certain tier, so a couple of things. We have a certain requirement by the state that we stay within a certain tier of production that is applied to our license. So yes, we are limited by regulation.
It's a legal limitation.
Yes.
Does the community know that within reason we're a vertically integrated state, right? NETA can't buy on the open market?
I'm aware of that. Okay. But I wasn't aware of it. You're saying that you can't expand your production in response to demand?
We have no intentions to expand. It would require us to go through a process with the state. We don't have the space to expand our facility any further than we've planned to date. So we have a limited capacity to cultivate and to process marijuana. That's limited by the tier that our license is required to stay within, and it is restricted by our actual operational capabilities.
Well, I have 3 questions. One of them was, is the size of the store limited by regulation?
No, it is not.
The second one was, I guess, a follow-up to the supply limit. So if you're opening a 3rd store, but you're not going to increase the supply?
So we have a small expansion planned in Franklin that is within the tier that we are currently subject to, that would help to supply that store, but it's not sufficient to meet the full demand of any one store. So our supply as it stands, our expectation is that our volume will start to decrease, which is why we're opening a 3rd location with limited supply. We would not make that business decision if we thought we wouldn't be able to shift some of that demand to our hopefully new Franklin location.
With the petitioners, if they have thought what the impact fees, how they would be used if there was up to them. We've heard from NETA how they think they should be used, and that they should be used before anything else is done. So if the petitioners had
I think I speak for a lot of people in the room. We don't want to spend our way out of this problem by putting a whole bunch of more police and trash cans in Brookline Village. We want to prevent the problem from happening in the first place. Yeah. So, right now there's an acute situation, and yeah, we need enforcement. There's no question about it. But I don't want to live in a place where we're just bringing in more police that are trained in drug recognition expertise. That's what's been suggested. I don't want to live in a place like that.
Impact fee, how it's being used, but we can do that whenever.
We'll do that. I wanna give the public a chance to speak. People have been sitting here very patiently, and unless there's a really needful question at this point, I'd like to move on. Okay, so we're gonna move to public comment now, and we don't have.
Can we get just a show of hands as to how many people sitting here are intending to speak? Okay, thank you.
We're lined up, I think, at the microphone at this point. Yeah. So.
2 minutes.
Okay? There's only one person that can speak, okay, at a time. So, we're lined up at the microphone, and I'm going to ask people to not repeat anything that's been said. We're looking for information, and you can say at the beginning how you feel about the resolution one way or another. That's obviously something you came here to do tonight. But you can say, I agree with the other speaker who said such and such. But you don't have to give a long dissertation on something that's been said a number of times. So I'm going to ask people to try to limit their comment to 2 minutes, and we'll begin right now.